everyone. I hope you had a good Labor Day weekend. I did. We're going to have our lesson extension for lesson 10 of our Peacemakers curriculum. In last week's lesson, we looked at a sad situation with Carlos and his dad, and the fact that Carlos was hurt because his dad had said that he would take him on a canoe trip, and then he was on the phone with someone and he was just headed out to go and do some work rather than canoe with his son. And at first, Carlos just was angry inside and didn't communicate with his dad at all. And then when his dad asked him about what was going on, he sort of just lashed out at his father with angry words, and then he even ran out and slammed the door. So things weren't going well for Carlos and his dad to be able to communicate with one another. Now, our verse says in Proverbs 21:23, "He who guards his mouth and his tongue keeps himself from calamity." So we learned that we need to use our noggins, our brains, and we need to think before we speak or communicate. Communication is when you're sending messages or sharing information with one another. Most of the time we do this when we're trying to get someone to understand something about us better, or we're trying to understand another person better. And communication is also, we learned in our lesson, verbal and nonverbal. So it's the words that you say, but we can also communicate in nonverbal ways, such as eye contact, body posture, facial expressions, and gestures. So you can communicate a lot of things even with how you look. So we need to think about the words we're saying and the way we're looking when we're trying to communicate effectively with others. We also have learned that the most effective form of communication is when we're respectful of another person, not disrespectful. When you're disrespectful to another person, they pretty much either just get angry or they shut you out, and they don't really listen to what you're saying. So if you want someone to really understand you, you need to be respectful. God created each and every person in this world, and I'm not better than you or anyone else, and you're not better than another person. So we always need to remember this when we begin speaking and communicating with other people. Let's look at a few examples of things that we can say and how we can say them in a more effective and respectful way. So here's one. "I heard you're afraid to go off the high dive." Well, that kind of sounds with the tone and the words you're saying that you're belittling someone for not going off of the high dive. If you're really wanting to understand the other person better, why don't you ask them? So why do you not ever go off the high dive? Maybe they'll share with you a real reason why they don't. Or if they are afraid, then maybe you might encourage them and say, "Oh, I used to be afraid too, but once I finally did it, it was a lot of fun." So that's a more effective and respectful way to communicate with someone. How about this? Let's say you've had your friend over to play for a couple of hours, and your little brother just keeps coming in with his toy truck, and he's wanting your friend to play with him. Well, he's wanting some attention, and he's annoying you. So let's say that you say this: "You're such a loser. Why would anyone want to spend any time with you?" That's hurtful words. You're aggravated at your brother, but you shouldn't attack him and act like he's a terrible, awful person and no one would want to ever spend time with him. You need to let your brother know, "Hey, I've only got my friend over here for a couple of hours, and I promise if you'll just leave us alone, then I'm going to play with you after he's gone. Or you even say, all right, we're going to play with you for 15 minutes, and then we need you to leave us alone so we can have some time, just my friend and I. So that's a better way to try to communicate with your brother. All right, how about this? This is the sentence. You got an A on the test? ? No way. All right, so you could say that a lot of different ways. You could say, you got an A on the test? No way. That almost sounds like you're pretty excited and happy for them. Or you could say, you got an A on that test? No way. That sounds like you don't believe that person's capable of getting an A on a test. Or, you got an A on the test? No way. I don't know. That maybe you're trying to sound like you think someone's a dork for getting an A on a test? I don't know. The problem with the words is that they are really vague. Those words could mean a lot of different things, and the other person has to rely on your tone of voice to understand what maybe you're trying to communicate. All right, so if you really want to have effective communication, you need to be clear about what you're saying, okay? So choose your words. Don't rely on your tone of voice or your expressions to communicate with other people, because that can just be confusing. All right, so let's say that you are talking to someone about God and you find out they don't believe in God. So would it be good to say, you don't believe in God? Boy, are you dumb. I think if you say that to someone, they're just going to shut down and become defensive and angry with you. Do you think they're going to really want to talk to you about God? So you need to think and choose more effective words to communicate. So I heard you don't believe in God. Can you tell me why? That's a question. You're trying to get more information from that other person about why they believe something. And then you might say, well, I do believe in God. I'd like to share with you why. And then you're giving them information about God. And at the end of the conversation, maybe they still don't believe in God. But you could say, if you'd ever like to talk about God another time, I'd be happy to talk with you. Okay, so this is still leaving the door open for you to have a conversation with a person who doesn't believe in God. Don't call them dumb. That will only shut them down to not want to talk to you at all. So that is a more effective way to communicate with someone. In our story, Carlos really does need to talk to his dad. And we talked about that being a confrontation. A confrontation is when you have to approach someone to tell them that they've done something that's hurt you or has been wrong. Now, sometimes we can overlook the fact that someone has done something to hurt us. In fact, in Proverbs 19:11, it says, "A man's wisdom gives him patience. It is to his glory to overlook an offense." So this says that if it's possible for you to just overlook an offense, then that's a good thing. Just let it go and don't make a big deal about it. So say that your sister has just eaten the last bowl of your favorite cereal, and you've gone in to get breakfast and there's none of your favorite cereal. Well, you probably don't need to attack her or confront her even about why she ate the last bowl of cereal. Okay, just let it go. That's something you can just overlook, go on. But in our story, Carlos really has been hurt by what his dad has done and how it's making him feel. So this is when we talk about going to someone and starting with maybe the I phrases. I feel hurt. I feel rejected because you're always choosing to go to work rather than spend time with me. So it's okay to confront someone. In fact, we have to do that sometime. So that's part of this whole curriculum, is being a peacemaker. One, we've got to choose wise words and expressions so that we can avoid a conflict, but sometimes we have to also resolve a conflict. And then we also need to have effective communication and respectful words to choose. One other thing that I want to talk about in communication that they brought out in the teacher's book that I don't think they really mentioned that much in the lesson that you received is this idea that of communicating a need or a desire. Sometimes we can communicate a need to a parent and something you really need, and most of the time our parents are very willing to give us the things that we need. But if we have requested that need in a disrespectful way, then it almost becomes a selfish demand. So say that your tennis shoes have a hole in them, so you do need a new pair of tennis shoes, and you come in and you just say, Mom, I've got to have a new pair of tennis shoes this weekend. That's a bit disrespectful and demanding. One, if your mother's paying for the shoes, you need to be respectful that she's the one with the money, and you should ask for them. Also, the tone of your voice communicates a demand, as if you're more important than anyone else, and you get to demand as if you're a king and you get to demand what you want. That's not good. So this need that you have, which is an okay thing to ask for, becomes a selfish desire by the way you communicate what you need. It also can happen with things that we want. It's okay to ask for things that we want. So say that you want to have a friend over. There's nothing wrong with having a friend over. But if you ask in a demanding way, that's selfishness. Or if when you've been denied a request for something you want, you then throw a temper tantrum, then that request that wasn't a terrible thing then becomes a bad conflict with you because of how you've responded to being denied something that you're asking for. So it's important to remember that not all of our desires are wrong or bad, but sometimes it's the way we communicate makes it seem that something's wrong or bad. So it's more in how you've communicated or asked for something. So be respectful in how you request those needs or desires. So I think that's all I have for this week. There's a lot of things to think about there about communication, effective communication. I hope that you can use some of these tips to be a more effective communicator this week. All right, talk to you later.